Doing?
Great.
Short cord over here. All right, we will definitely be doing some Q&A stuff, and I know we could do a panel on probably each one of this man's films. So we're going to try to cover as much as we can. But let's start at the beginning, if you will. Tell us a little bit about what it was like kind of growing up as a monster kid. Those films that really got you hooked on the ideas of sci-fi and monsters and all that good stuff.
I grew up in the 1950s, and there was a wave of science fiction movies happening then. And most of them were big monster movies, like Them, Beginning of the End, big giant monsters. And we didn't have a youth culture, per se, back then. We had a little rock and roll. But radio stations would play, like Frank Sinatra, and then Elvis, and then, you know, Mondovani, and then another rock and roll song. We didn't have anything for us. And monster movies was it. I just fell in love with them. So my favorite films are probably from the 50s, from the 1950s. Horror and science fiction.
Okay. And as well, you came from a musical family. Did your family sort of share that interest in sci-fi, and what did they think of you having that interest?
No, they didn't think it was too healthy for me to be interested in science fiction and monsters and horror. I think my father thought I was going astray as a young man. And only later, when I was able to support myself in the movie business, was he happy. Because I think he wanted me to be a musician, really in his heart, secretly. So I got to fulfill his wish by composing some music of my own on the movies. But my father's still with us. He's 92. He's still happy.
So what is his take on your films, especially since you are putting so much of your own music into them?
Well, I've never asked. We don't want to talk about what my father thinks of my movies. My dad's a PhD from Eastman School of Music, and he's a virtuoso on the violin. So he doesn't like my movies, probably. I don't.
Right. And then at a certain point, you get older and you get interested in film, and you start going to film school and stuff like that. You discover the heavy hitters like Hitchcock and guys like that. And there's definite Hitchcockian elements in terms of the voyeurism in a lot of your films, particularly the earlier ones. Your 8-minute short, Captain Voyeur, for example. And I'd love to hear how you were grabbed by that.
Well, I grew up watching all movies, and I fell in love with cinema when I was young. I saw Alfred Hitchcock films, and I didn't understand as a kid quite what was going on there. Until I went to film school. I went to USC, when at the time it was the best film school in the world. And they had a lot of ties with Hollywood. So we had a lot of Hollywood directors, some really masters at the time, come down and talk to us. John Ford, Howard Hawks, and Alfred Hitchcock, among others, Orson Welles. And we would sit and ask them questions, and we would show their movies. So I began to learn what they did. I learned the plumbing of movies, and I began to understand what Hitchcock was doing. And then I revisited many of his films that I had seen as a kid, and I realized, there's a lot of thematic material going on here that I really wasn't as aware of when I was a kid. So if you're going to do anything with suspense or a thriller, Hitchcock's your guy. You got to study what he's done. And you can break his rules, but his rules will guide you to the audience projecting into the screen and projecting onto the characters. That's what you need as an identification process, especially in a thriller. Because the audience has to be with a character in the movie. And he did that the very, very best.
And another one of the major elements in your cinema, of course, is sort of the tough guy, and that comes right out of the Western. You've got many of the Western motifs, and of course, Assault on Precinct 13, I would say vampires are about as close to being Westerns without being set on horseback as you can come.
Oh, I love Westerns. I got in this business to make Westerns. But they stopped making them. And I think they stopped making them because, A, the spaghetti westerns in the 60s kind of changed everything. They kind of, I don't know where you go from there. Although Once Upon a Time in the West is just a great, great movie. But after that, what are you going to do? And you know, TV kind of destroyed it, and Star Wars destroyed the Western. They took it over. Intergalactic fantasy. So every time I can sneak a little Western business into something, I love it. One of my favorite actors was John Wayne. I just loved what he did on screen and the heroes he portrayed. So there you go.
Absolutely. And of course, there's probably one or two fans here of a movie called Halloween, I'm going to guess. Including the Michael And, you know, no panel be complete unless we talked a little bit about that. Now, you probably talked about this film to death. How do you feel about it now?
I feel great about it. Here's the reason why. I made that movie when I was 30 years old. I was still trying to get in the movie business. And we had about 22 days of shooting. We had Donald Pleasance, Jamie Lee was there, I had Dean Cundy. We had a great time making it. And it sort of boosted my career. And it turned me into a director to be reckoned with. What that means is if you make them money, they like you. If you don't make them money, they don't care about you. It's as simple as that. So finally I started getting offers and I was on my way. But ever since then, they decided to make sequels to Halloween, which I never thought was a good idea. Because I never thought, and this is how stupid I am, I never thought there was any story left. I thought the story ended at the very end there, and that was it. But no. However, I will tell you one thing. I'm not going to talk about what I think of the sequels and the remakes. That's up to you to decide. But, every time they make a new Halloween movie, something really great happens to me. Let me tell you what it is. I'm sitting on my couch. My feet are up. I read in the trades they're going to make a new Halloween. I extend my hand and a check lands. This is the kind of job I've wanted my entire life.
Of course, what makes the film so well loved by horror fans is the boogeyman element. You know, the boogeyman is universal. Who was your boogeyman when you were a kid?
I was afraid of everything. Everything. Dude, thank you very much. Excuse me. I was afraid of everything when I was growing up, and then slowly but surely that all calmed down. But I think the reason for Halloween, the reason behind it, besides all the obvious things, which is I had a movie to make, I had a story to tell. Because every little town, or at least it wasn't true in my little town that I grew up in, has kind of a haunted house, a story, an old house that's abandoned, and a story of something happened there years ago. And so I just decided to take that and make a feature-length film out of it. That's really all there was to it. Michael Myers is on the edge of being a human and a ghost. And that's where the tension in the film is. He's not really a person. That's why I stripped him of all backstory, essentially. Everybody else talks about him, but he's really masked. He has no features. There's no personality there. You see him in one quick shot. That was all designed to make him straddle that line between the natural and the supernatural. As one of the reasons the movie struck a chord, because people hadn't seen that before.
And I believe I watched an interview where you also explained that he is a blank slate, which is perfect for projecting your own fears onto.
That's correct. That's the whole idea.
Okay. And of course, the mask is a twisted version of a William Shatner mask. I was always curious, have you ever met William Shatner? Has he ever commented on that?
No.
So, you know, when you
got a Captain Kirk mask. They made a Captain Kirk mask so you could be Captain Kirk for Halloween. and it looked nothing like Shatner. It looked nothing like him. So, but I just enjoyed saying the word Shatner. It just was fun to say.
It's very fun to say, actually. Fantastic. Well, personal favorite for me is They Live. And there's a lot of talk these days, especially about how pressing it is in terms of things that are going on in the world today. Do you feel like, you know, that was kind of your intent, or are you just happy that people are finding that in the film?
Well, the They Live, for me, was this cry of rage against what was going on in America at that time. There's the Reaganism, and there's Thatcherism in England. I don't know what was happening in Canada here. But
We were just hanging out.
But I just wanted to scream bloody murder. So I took the short story, 8 o'clock in the morning, and adapted it. Probably went too far with the message, but the 80s have never left America. They're still happening right now. The mindset behind that's never gone away. And it's incredibly depressing. But let's don't be depressed. Let's be happy today. Happy.
Well,
I'd like to ask a question.
we will, absolutely.
I gotta go meet my drug dealer here.
Let's do that then. Let's take some questions from you guys. How about right there, sir?
Hi, John. Do you have any technical preferences as a filmmaker when you're shooting a film?
Technical, what are you talking about?
Well, do you have any specific ways you like to shoot the films?
Panavision lenses, anamorphic lenses, 35 millimeter, go to digital after you shoot it. That's probably most of it.
I guess perhaps a great follow-up to that would be, how did you fall in love with the widescreen format? Was it watching those spaghetti westerns?
No, it was earlier than that. In the 50s, when CinemaScope was first introduced in movie theaters. CinemaScope and stereophonic sound. And I just loved the shape of the screen. It's a big, giant rectangle. And early on, they couldn't pan the camera with CinemaScope. All the straight up and down lines was bull. So they had to dolly pan. But I didn't care. It just was this giant vista, especially in westerns, big gladiator movies. So I fell in love with it. I just wanted to do it. You know. Let's go. You sit in the back. Stand up. Right behind you. Yeah. Hey.
John, first of all, I want to say that The Thing is my favorite film of all time.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
I saw that when I was 10 years old. I'm 40 now. I'm still watching it. One of the things, no pun intended, that occurs to me when I watch the film is, especially in sequences like Norris's transformation or Marvel's transformation, there's no background music. And you get a lot of music in other films to heighten the mood, but not in that film. So what made you take that decision?
Why is there no tension music in the transformation scenes in The Thing? I just didn't think they needed it. You know, I thought the visuals and the sound effects especially could carry you along. As a composer, all I do is, after I cut the movie together, watch it on a screen and provide music where I think the movie needs, the scenes need help. I just support what I've shot. And The Thing, when it was going by in those scenes, I thought there's nothing that needs to be done. So that was really why. All right,
And a question that a lot of people have actually brought up, some people are asking online. They wanted to hear a little bit about your working relationship with Rob Bottin on that film.
Well, Rob Bottin was a young genius in special makeup effects. He worked with Rick Baker and had done a lot of work with him. And I met and worked with Rob on The Fog. It was a movie I made. Was it right before The Thing? I can't remember now. I think so. Rob Bottin was the big ghost in the end of The Fog. That was him in makeup. And he did a big claw for us. And he was just a big kind of goofy guy who provided the idea for The Thing. He said it can look like anything. It's imitated every life form that's encountered out there, so we can just go crazy. It doesn't have to look like one monster. And I thought, well, that's great. So I had the movie all set. He was terrific. I haven't seen Rob in years. I don't know what he's doing now.
Right there, please.
Hi, John.
Hi
I have
there.
a question about your music for Halloween.
Uh-huh.
What was your inspiration for that?
My father taught me 5/4 time when I was a kid. So, not being a very creative guy, I thought, I'll just do that. So it's octaves. It's 5/4 time on octaves. D, 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 and go up a half step. And then you just add a bass line and you're all set.
And you mentioned just before we came on that you're still composing a lot.
Yeah, yeah.
Maybe you could tell us about the music that you're making now.
Well, my son is also a musician, and he and I spend a lot of time composing music. We may actually put something out on the internet that we've done together, so sort of a soundtrack sampler of stuff. But I'm doing it for fun now. I'm just happy to be alive, guys. I want to have a good time. Basketball season's coming up. There are new video games coming out. I cannot wait for this fall.
Let's go right there. Yes, sir.
Out of all the people that you could cast in the lead role, They Live, you cast Roddy Piper, and I read that this came after meeting him after like WrestleMania 3 or something. Well, could you just elaborate on that a little bit and explain why you felt he was the best for that role?
There were two ways of going with making They Live. You could make the hero or heroine, it depended, white collar person, which in other words would work at a TV station, let's say, and would discover, oh, they're putting a signal out. Or you could make him a blue collar working man and see the whole thing from the ground up. And that's what I decided to do. So I met with Roddy, and he was a really smart guy. And he really wanted to try hard. And he looked like a working man. You know, he had the feel of a working man. So I thought, he's my guy.
All right, so we've got many more. Very back there, sir.
Yeah, another movie I like yours is Escape from New York. I was wondering if you thought that- I don't know also if you could talk about how the character came about and whether you can see it, if you saw more adventures coming up for him in the future.
Well, let me answer that last part first. Oh, there are plans. They've actually paid me the money, like I told you. I think they're going to do, if they ever get it together, a remake of Escape from New York with a new actor and a new director. It could be great. We don't know. That movie was written when I realized I had to write my way into the movie business because nobody wanted to hire me as director after my first film. It was a big shock to me. I thought a limo would pull up and they'd take me to a soundstage, and that didn't happen. So I wrote Escape from New York after seeing a movie called Death Wish about what New York looked like in the 70s. And there was also a science fiction novel by Harry Harrison. I can't remember which one it was. Planet of the Damned or something like that. Where this guy has to go into the most evil place in the universe to solve a problem. So I just sort of thought, well, I can do this. New York's the prison, and their hero is, and so he's based on a guy I knew in high school who just didn't give a fuck about anything. And he doesn't want to hurt you. He doesn't want to help you. He just wants to move on. So the only way to get him in this situation is to force him. So we had to do the whole thing where they put something in his bloodstream. So that was the character, and Kurt did a real good job of it.
And would you say...
I'm only looking at my watch because my drug dealer appointment. That's the only reason.
Right. Let's,
Hi.
What movies, if any, in the last couple of years have you thoroughly enjoyed?
Well, I'm a big David Fincher fan. I just think he's a terrific director. I like the way he frames, I like the way he designs his movies. I like that a lot. I like his work a lot. So I'm not as big a fan of The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo, his version of it, but the one before.
Yeah.
What the hell's the name of that thing?
Social Network.
Thank you very much. Social Network's really good. I enjoyed that a lot.
Let's, right there. You got it.
Oh, yeah.
I am a big fan of Little Big Trouble in Little China. Talk about some of the behind the scenes or stories that you had working with James Hong and Russell and Wong.
We're looking for a good Big Trouble in Little China story.
Well, that movie was a blast to make. I mean, it was just fun. It was rollicking fun. I got to work with all these really incredible martial arts masters, and they each had a little specialty. I mean, it was incredible. We had great sets. We had a really, really good script. Then it was a chance for me to make as close as you can get to a Hong Kong Run Run Shaw Kung Fu movie that I kind of saw in the 70s and fell in love with. And it was a chance that they had, a lot of Chinese films at the time had a real sense of innocence about it. That was what was so wonderful about it. So I wanted to bring that into the movie. And it was also a chance to make a film with a Western hero, Kurt Russell's character, who's a sidekick and doesn't know it. He thinks he's a hero, but he's not. He's completely incompetent. And the only negative thing about Big Trouble was that there was an organization in San Francisco who decided to protest us because I was white. And I could not make a movie about Asians. They wanted me to be fired and to hire an Asian director. And that wasn't fun. And that wasn't fun at all. But other than that, the movie was great. And James Hong made a great Lo Pan. And James Hong is Lo Pan, actually.
And of course, one of the reasons that fans love these films so much is because you fought to have them made the way you wanted them made. And at the end of the day, that's why we love a movie like Big Trouble in China. We love a movie like The Thing, even though at the time, the public didn't always know what to do with it. Critics didn't always know what to do with it. Do you feel vindicated now that there's these sequels and remakes coming in?
It's all good, guys. It's all good. You guys sitting in this room are smarter than all the studio heads combined.
Right in the front.
Thank you. Mr. Carpenter,
Hey, hey.
you had seen the movie Carver. It was based on a true story, a little like the Saw series.
Haven't seen it, no.
Maybe it's something maybe you can check out on the internet.
I will. Are you in it?
Or-
Oh.
No, but the guy in it looks just like Robert Picton, who killed all the girls, the prostitutes.
I'll check it out.
Yeah.
All right.
All right, so let's go right to the front row here.
What's your next project?
I'm developing two projects. Okay, one is a Gothic Western type of thing based on a true story called The Bloody Benders. They were a family in Ohio who had a little shop right outside of town. They had some sign that said grocery. They do home cooked meals for the people as they ride in, killing and steal, rob from them, but they slit their throats and all sorts of great stuff. So there's one. And I'm working on a comic book called Dark Child. It was a comic in the 90s that was pretty popular. And I'm trying to do a movie version of that. But when people say development, what they mean is trying to raise money. That's what it's all about. So we'll see what happens.
There's a comic book artist named Rick Geary who does true crime stuff, and he did a Bloody Benders. If you want to really get into this story and see what John's working on, I suggest you seek it out. It's fantastic. Of course, you know, you have loves outside of filmmaking, obviously. I mean, you're all over the place. You got music, comic books, and also video games.
Video games.
Tell us about your love of video games.
Well, I love playing video games. I grew up playing them with my son raised me in video games because he showed me what was going on. So a couple of years ago, a friend of mine, Steve Niles, a comic book artist, and he called me up and said, I'm working on Fear 3. And they pay good money and it'll be a chance for us to hang out. What do you think? So I said, yeah. So we worked on the script together, and it's a whole different ballgame. The designers, the level designers, and the programmers control everything. Everything has to be, you have to follow what they're going to do. But it's a blast. And I love to design and, you know, and generally tell the story of one from the start. It'd be great.
And you play...
I recommend all of you get an old game called The Thing. They put it out. Because I am a character. I'm a character. I get killed in it, but play it.
And I had heard that you actually play online with Steve and other people. Is that true?
No.
You don't have a secret online personality?
I'm not gonna play online. Everybody here's gonna kick my ass.
Let's go all the way over there, please.
I just want to say, I fell in love with your work actually through Kurt Russell.
Uh-huh.
I've been a fan of Kurt Russell's ever since I was 5, like beginning with the Disney flicks. So
Sure.
This is Elvis.
Sure.
I still think it's the best biography about Elvis and
Thanks.
his performance.
Yeah. He was great, wasn't he?
He's brilliant.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
that's my question. Can you please make another movie with Kurt Russell?
Okay, let me explain Kurt to you. Kurt's not a person for nostalgia. If the material is good, he'll make a movie. And if they pay him enough money, because he's an expensive guy. So, you never know in this business. Maybe we'll do something together.
You know, would you, obviously you'd like to.
Oh, well, hell, are you kidding? He's easy.
Yeah.
He's easy for me. Sure.
Thanks.
Let's go right in the middle, right there, sir. Yes, you.
Yes. It used to be that horror films, when they were made, it was left to your imagination for the killing scenes and that. And nowadays, it seems the imagination has been taken completely out of it, and you see all the blood and gore. Can you comment on that? What do you think?
Well, they were doing mostly in the old days when there was a production code in movies. They couldn't show you anything. So it was all inferred, it was all in shadows. And there's a generalized cliche in the movie business that it's better that way. It's better to not show things. On the other hand, if the movie is really good and you have a good story, show it. Show it. Thank you, dude. So for me, it depends on the story. So I can't answer for anybody else or any trends. But it depends on what story you're telling. In Halloween, we had very little on-screen violence because everybody knows what happens with a knife. We all cut ourselves. So I don't have to do that. But the Thing, and so we'll put it out there right in front of you and wag its tongue at you because here we have it. So it really depends on the story. Let me put it that way. Right there, sir.
Besides working with Kurt Russell, John, did you ever consider working with Dean Cundy again?
Sure.
Doing an atmospheric, creepy ass score like you've done.
Sure.
Missed that.
Sure. Maybe we should touch on your scoring work for a moment. Was this something that was more a matter of budget, or do you kind of have this music in your head from the writing stage?
I have no music in my head from the writing stage. It's all improvised. The reason I score movies is because I'm cheap and I'm fast. Seriously, that's it.
But you're great.
Thank you very much. But I don't know if I'll do so many anymore if I make movies. It's too hard, guy. It's exhausting. It's too hard. I'm too old.
Do you have I know you talked about some projects that you're working on, but if somebody gave you, say, a check for $20 million, no strings attached, do you have a bigger budget dream project you'd pursue?
I know. No.
Okay. Let's get some more questions going.
Let's get one more and then I've got to go. Okay?
All right. Who's got a wham bang killer question? Let's go. I see tattooed arm right there.
Yeah.
I'm the guy that brought you the 9 posters the other day.
Yeah, yeah. Good man. Good man.
Thank you. I want to ask you about the fog. We didn't talk about that. Your directing style is it's always simplistic and the shots are just beautiful, which is very unlike anything that most other movies have ever done. And the fog, I think, captures that atmosphere the best with a lot of those shots. I just wanted you to talk about the fog and how you shot it, and why maybe people might not have, or just what you thought about that style, why you do that style, and why it works for that film.
Well, you used the word simplistic, and I'm a simplistic kind of guy. And I tell a story a certain way. Now, in the fog, we made that movie. We shot it on location, and we cut it together, and it was a piece of shit. So I had to go back and reshoot and work on it to make it better. And we released it, and it was open #1, and it was great, but...
How did you get the story for that, the fog?
Right out of this dome here. But I love, like I say, I just love the lenses, the Panavision lenses, and widescreen, and too bad there's no more Metro Color, because they were the best processing lab in Hollywood at the time. But it's very nice of you to say, to talk about the fog. That's one of the ones that doesn't get mentioned too much.
One of my favorites.
Yeah. All right.
Scheduled for a couple more minutes, and I feel like it would be incomplete if we didn't have you maybe talk about Deborah Hill a little bit and her influence on your work. I think that'd be an important point to touch on.
Well, Deborah was my script supervisor in Assault on Precinct 13, and she knew how to make movies. She knew the process, the day-to-day process. She knew how to read a board, how it went. So when it came time to make Halloween, she was terrific. You know, her creative input was the most on Halloween, I think, because she did a draft first, and then I rewrote it. But Deborah went on to produce some many terrific movies and worked with some really good directors. And had a great career. We lost her a few years ago, but she will be remembered.
Absolutely. All right. That's fantastic. John's drug dealer is here. I saw him poke his head in.
Got to go.
Yeah, but the beautiful thing is he's going to be here for a few more hours, I believe, at the convention.
I will be.
So you can come down and get an autograph and meet him. And please give him a huge round of applause for being here. We really appreciate it.